What is up? What is up, everybody? What is up? Happy Friday, night before the Auburn game. Guilty as charged. Guilty as charged. I can't stand Auburn. Can't stand Auburn. Their team, it's just always. I've had a hard time with Auburn, because there's been these heartbreakers. The Les Miles play clock game. There's also been some great wins, but they felt so good because we hated Auburn, and so that's what makes this week interesting always, because it always seems to usher in the season being full octane, high octane SEC games from here on out. Like from here on out, it's all killer, no filler, except for UAB, which comes as kind of like a breather in a way after such a scorched earth navigation for LSU through the SEC. But yes, tonight we have a special guest. We're waiting to join us right now, Jake Crain from Crain Company. Awesome dude. We started watching his stuff when the pandemic was going down, and that's when our stuff kind of started taking off more as well. And we were very influenced watching his stuff. No holds barred, just awesome content. Very entertained every time we watched it. There was something that we were interested in that day, wanted to figure out or know about. We'd watch, some other sources, of course, but Crain Company, before Crain Company, J-Boy Show, always was a landing spot for us to go, kind of get educated about some of this stuff, because sometimes there's better sports minds than me. I don't really feel like I know everything or anything even close to that. I feel like there's people who know way more than I do, way more about football than I will ever know about football. And so I love to learn as much as I possibly can from these type of people. And one of those people is the J-Boy Show. J-Boy. And we're hoping to get him on at 4. I'm sorry, that would be my time. 5:20 Central Time. So hopefully here in just a second. But we're excited because J-Boy, it's weird calling him J-Boy. Maybe just go back to calling him Jake. Jake, I mean, he's got this history with Auburn, and so that being his team, and so LSU, Auburn, there's no program he knows more about than Auburn, and so getting Jake's take on LSU Auburn is something that I definitely would love to hear. Just 1 second. Getting this sent out here. Oh my gosh, Jake Crain is with us. J-Boy. What's up, J-Boy?
Lon, what's up, buddy?
Doing good, my man. Doing good. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, Jake.
Oh, for sure. You too, man.
Jake, I've been watching your channel for like 2 years now.
I appreciate it.
Back in since it was the J-Boy Show.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like when sports closed down in 2020, some blogs and podcasters really started to move in on the national media turf, and you were the best of that wave.
Appreciate that.
What's it been like for you to kind of see this rise?
Yeah, well, Lon, first off, I appreciate you having me on, buddy. I really enjoy your work. It's really fun going back and forth with you on social media. You always keep it interesting, which is hard to do nowadays when everybody just agrees with everybody. Man.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, no problem. The show kind of kind of started by accident. I mean, I was coaching. I coached for 9 years, 6.5 at the Division I level, and then COVID sent us and the players back, and that was the first year of the early signing period, or one of the first years. I had a bunch of my guys already signed, so just messing around, trying to waste time, and it kind of blew up into this thing that took over, and I decided to take a chance. But in all actuality, I think I'm in a coma, to be honest with you. Like, this is fun. Like, I don't even know if you're a real person, to be honest with you. I feel like I'm in a coma. I hope I don't wake up. This is super awesome. I've got a fiance that's unbelievable, and we live in a great place and have a great job. But I just wonder, when I do wake up, what semi truck hit me, or where did I fall asleep on the road? But in all actuality, man, it's been unbelievable. I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. This has done nothing but reinforce that. Love where I work, love the people I work with, my brother and David Cohn, and being at the Daily Wire, and being able to interact with those guys and talk about sports. It's unbelievable, man. And, I always tell, our audience, I don't really call them fans, because I'm a fan of them being a fan of me. I don't really look at it like that. But I always tell our audience, without you guys, there is no us. I feel like my job isn't to, tell people, what they need to hear or what they want to hear. It's really kind of what they need to hear and what I think. I'm never gonna tell people. So I'm never gonna go chase views by saying, Skip Bayless type things, or stuff like that. I feel like if you listen to our show, then, like, you really know who I am. You really know who my brother is. You really know who Cone is. And Cone played at Michigan. Blaine played at Western Colorado. We grew up in a sports family, and really in a football family. And I always say, if I was a chef for years, I'd probably have a pretty good chef podcast.
Well, that's the thing, man. Is like, people don't realize you're not just a media dude. You left the college game as a Division I assistant to start this channel, and I mean, you have a strong background though in broadcast journalism as well. But as a coach's son, Jake, why did you make that switch? What made you make that switch? I mean, I know you saw maybe that there was some success brewing with that venture, but at the same time, why, what made you leave the sports world, the coaching world?
Well, man, yeah, it's a good question, and the best way I found to answer it, I mean, it's all circumstantial, right? Like, I feel like, again, everything happens for a reason. And when COVID hit, I mean, I was interviewing for the DC job. Like, it wasn't like I was looking for a way out. I mean, I was working my way up. I'd grinded. I'd been in GA. I'd slept on the air mattress in the GA office. I had done all that. I had earned my dues, and I was moving up and stuff like that. And then when COVID happened, I just came back, stayed with some family in Tupelo, because obviously when you're coaching, you rent houses where you go. So I didn't want to stay up there and just sit in the freezing cold, because where I was, believe me, it gets cold. I mean, you're 3 miles away from the North Pole, so it gets pretty chilly up there. So sitting in Tupelo, and look, I'm not a technological savant by any stretch of the imagination. It took all of my knowledge to be able to say. I just was sitting there one day. I looked at my brother, who was back. He was coaching too. They had sent them back. He was in Iowa coaching. And I was like, dude, what if I just started like a podcast or something, and we just talked about football and just like waste time? Because you're used to working, like heavy days, 20-hour days, stuff like that. Recruiting never stops. So my schedule was all messed up. So I bought a $50 mic off Sweetwater.com and had this old Acer laptop. My coaching laptop was still up at school, where I was coaching, and came back. And the thing is, Lon, I didn't plan on this. I didn't start doing this like, you know what, I'm gonna do a sports show. Now, I have in my mind, because as a sports fan, I listen to sports shows, and I would listen to some of the top guys in the national media, and there's a lot of the time, like, you can tell they really don't know. They don't know what they're talking about, but it's like there's some holes that they don't understand because they haven't been in it. And that's not making fun of somebody. There's stuff I don't know. Hell, my wife is a professional equestrian, and I can just get on a horse. I don't know about that stuff. I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, but I'm also smart enough to know what I do know. So I had always kind of thought that in the back of my mind. So when I started doing it, it really kind of took off from the jump. Now, look, timing's everything. All right, I'm from Auburn. My dad played at Auburn. This was Gus Malzahn's last year. So
Yeah.
but I'm not really talking that much about that because I'm still in the coaching profession. I'm like, hell, Malzahn, I may have a chance to get hired at Auburn one day. I don't want to burn that bridge there. And then so I'm looking at the views, and in my mind, like I got it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. There was no video. That was the limit. That was the ceiling of my technological, intellectualism, whatever you want to call it, or knowledge, whatever you want to call it. So when looking at the views, I'm thinking, all right, what's good is like Joe Rogan. 800,000 views. Ben Shapiro, 1,000,000 views. So I'm sitting there like the first episode I put out, and like I wasn't telling anybody about it on social media. I just put it out. So I'm like, all right, come back the first day. It's got like 8,000 listens. I'm like, man, that sucks. I'm like, that must not be that good or whatever. I didn't realize that was actually pretty good for your first show. So on social media, like more people are messaging me like, hey man, I'm listening to this. Like, this is pretty dope. And so I'm like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep doing it. I was doing like, one every 3 days. Like I said, I didn't plan on this. So all of a sudden, like the views started going up, like by a decent amount. And I know guys in the coaching profession. Had a buddy of mine that's very well connected with Auburn say, hey, if Auburn loses to South Carolina, they're going to fire Gus Malzahn. And so I said that on the show, and everybody, oh my goodness, you don't know what you're talking about. There's no way this will happen. Who is this guy? The beat writers at Auburn are making fun of me and ostracizing me. Not that I cared. I mean, I wasn't going to do this for a living.
I've been there.
Happened. Like exactly how I said it was going to happen. And then it was like giving, meth to a meth addict, man. It just turned all the way up and went nuts. And all of a sudden, then I started explaining the football parts. Like, all right, you look at some of these shows and they're like, you know what? Georgia needs to run the ball better. Well, yeah, they need to run the ball better. My goldfish can tell you they need to run the ball better. And he doesn't know anything. I mean, he can barely swim. I'm afraid he's going to drown. But why aren't they running the ball better? Are they not good enough up front personnel-wise to keep running big on big? Base blocking everything, running counter, running power, running trucks, running ISO. Should they be more of a zone run team, which is built to cut back, which can hit at multiple places, which is basically the RPO of the offensive line? And people are like, oh my goodness, I've never heard this before. And that's when I came up with the slogan, and it really started to hit me. I was like, man, there may be like a huge alley for this. There may be a huge lane for this. And it kept getting more and more and more. And then I started getting reached out to from sponsors, like emailing me, cold emailing me. And I'm looking around like, dude, I don't know how much a 30-second ad read is. So I'm like, all right, I'll do 3 30-second ad reads a week for $2,000 a month. And they're like, okay. And I'm like, what? Like, that's off one ad? So I'm doing the math in my head. And I'm like, man, so you're telling me, I'll never forget, I sat down by myself one night, and I was talking to a buddy of mine in the coaching business. I was like, dude, I got to tell you this. Like, I think I may be overthinking this. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, so you mean to tell me that I don't have to work 20 hours a day? I don't have to rely on an 18 to 22-year-old to keep my job and put food on my family's table. And they're going to pay me this amount of money for a 30-second ad read 3 times a week for a month? And that's just one? That's the first seed that planted in my mind. At that moment, when I realized that financially how lucrative that it could be and how much I was enjoying it, that it's something I could possibly do. But I was still interviewing for the DC job. It's still my goal. I wanted to be a head coach in the SEC. And then all of a sudden, it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We kept getting put off and put off and put off. And so the day that he finally was like, all right, you're flying back up here in a week. I'm flying out of Memphis. I was like, should I tell him now? Do I want to do this? I was still undecided. You can ask Blaine this. Me, Blaine, and my grandmother all get into the car because she wanted to see us. She lived really close in a neighborhood over by where the duplex was. And so I'm like, all right, you ride with us. And on the way up there, I'm driving. And I'm just, something's telling me. Something's just telling me like, dude, you need to do this. Dude, you need to do this. Do this. Like, don't fly out. We drive the hour and a half up to Memphis. I'm in the parking deck, and I just look at my brother, and I'm like, dude, I want to try and do this podcast thing. And he's like, well, this is just a classic Blaine. He's like, well, if you're going to do it, then I'm going to do it. And I was like, dude, don't make this decision because of me. And he's like, nah, man, if you're going to do it, I'll do it with you. So I called our head coach in the parking deck in Memphis, Tennessee, and I told him, and he kind of understood, but he really didn't understand. And it's funny. He sent me a text about a month ago, and he's like, "Hey man," because he actually got fired. He was like, "Looks like you made the right decision." So that's really how it happened. I mean, I would love to say that there was some master plan behind it, or that I had moved all these chess pieces around the chessboard to set it up. But I guess like all good things, it kind of just happened, or most good things, it kind of just happened organically. And when I got back, I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this in like coaching hours. I'm looking around and people are putting out, like one podcast a week or 3 a week. And look, to each his own. I'm not saying one way is better than the other. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to put one out every day, Monday through Monday. And that's what I did. And that's what we've been doing. And, within 3 months, I got called by some investors in Atlanta who wanted to get me on video. So they set me up a studio in Atlanta and rented me a house and did all these other things. And so I went up there, and 4 months after that, Colin Cowherd's team reached out to us, and we signed a 6-month deal with them and flew out and met him. And when we were negotiating after the first 6 months, because it went so well, we're getting ready to ink a deal, and I get a Twitter DM from Ben Shapiro, who's like, "Hey man, I'm listening to the show. This is really good stuff." So like at this point, that's when I started thinking I was going to go.
Hero.
It's like if, and I'm not a big LeBron fan, but if LeBron came up to you and was like, "Hey man, you're good at basketball," you know what I'm saying? Like it's like that. Like who else? Cowherd already said it's nice. Shapiro already said it's nice. I'm as humble guy as there is, and I still got a lot to learn and a long way to go. But eventually, man, you got. It's like Drake said, "It's real when you are who you thought you were."
You are who we thought you are.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it's just a cool story though, man, because like it seems kind of there's a lot of parallels. I've seen this kind of grow naturally, and I've seen that you've kind of rise, and it's been very cool. But take us behind the scenes of Crain and Company. What is an average day like filming an episode with your brother Blaine, as you just said, and former Michigan quarterback David Cohn?
Former Heisman candidate before the
Former
season.
Heisman candidate David Cohn.
Man, the best way I can say it's the best job in the world. We were going from 1 to 2 Central, and then it was doing so well they wanted to move us into drive time, so they moved us. We go now from 6:30 to 8 Central, 7:30 to 9 Eastern. So I'll get up because I'm one of those people. I got to get up. Like I'm a routine person. I got to get up. I got to take a shower. Sometimes, I'll write stuff, and so I do my best thinking in the shower. A lot of people do. Some people do their best singing. Maybe that's because nobody can hear. But I get up at about 4 in the morning, 4:15 sometimes. I'll hit snooze every now and then, But get up, do my routine, have to have a cup of coffee. And so we get to the studio. I'll get there around 5:25, 5:30, because we have to do like wardrobe and all that stuff. So we go in there. They tell us what clothes we're wearing. They, do all the stuff. It's still weird wearing makeup, man. I'm not gonna lie. It's pretty weird. They do your hair and all that stuff, and we're just laughing the whole time. Because the thing about the show, I think the thing that works is that like we're exactly the same off the air as we are on the air. You just get to hear that hour and a half. If you can see so we get in there and we set the show the day before, and we talk about the topics, but we don't tell each other what we think. Unless we're going collectively on a list, then you have to tell each other what you think. So like all the reactions you see are genuine. Like, because we don't want it to be, all right, like some of these other shows are like, you're going to agree, you're going to disagree. Well, that sucks because you can't really argue a point that you don't believe. Eventually, you end up looking stupid at some point, like we see a lot with sports media, where you can't argue. Mad Dog's the worst about it. He'll say,
"Oh God, he's so bad.
You don't believe," and then when there's pushback, he can't argue anywhere on it because it doesn't make sense what he's saying and he doesn't believe it. So any reaction that you see on Crain Company it's genuine. It's that's the first time we've really gone in depth about it. So yeah, man, it's like before the show today. I mean, we were geeking for the first 15 minutes. I forgot what Blaine said, but he said something that was absolutely hilarious. And then like they just flip the camera on and I read the long line and then the monologue, and we just go through the show. Half the time I forget we're being recorded.
Yes.
Which can be a good thing or a bad thing, I guess.
It's a very good thing because you're just really putting out gold. I mean, you're not really walking yourself into problems or trouble. You've got a
Yeah,
really good way with words.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, I think a lot of it, especially when it comes to football, is when you coach, you have a group of guys, a new group of crop of young guys every year, some old guys that return, but you're having to take complex football problems and explain them in a way that the young guys can understand it, so they can go out there and just react and not think. And now
Yeah.
that's not the funny stuff or the personality side. That's just us. But when it comes down to explaining things, like today, for example, on the show, Cone got to talking about looking at Joe Burrow, going through his reads. He had a circus route to the field, didn't throw the circus route, and threw the check down. And so I'm like, David, explain to people what a circus route is. And he explained it in a fantastic way where people that are listening can be like, wow. Because my whole goal is I want our audience to be able to watch the game better than anybody else. Because I want our audience, that's why the slogans win the water cooler, to be able to, whether it's at a family gathering, whether it's at work at the water cooler and you're arguing with your buddies, to be able to win every argument, to be able to speak the football language. We want to be the Rosetta Stone of football. So I think that's one aspect of the show that is really taken off as well, because you can be entertained, you can laugh, you can hear genuine good conversation, but you can leave every episode and go, you know what? I learned something today that I wouldn't learn unless I was in the building. And I think that's kind of a little niche that we have as well. Because it's one thing, Lon, it's one thing for me to know it. It's another thing for me to be able to explain it to the players or the audience. Because like I used to tell my guys all the time, it doesn't matter how much I know. It matters how much I know that I can get you to know. Because you have to play. I'm not
Yeah.
catching a pass, throwing a pass, making a tackle or anything. You've got to know it. So I think all that kind of prepared me a little bit for this. Because in the same vein, these shows are kind of similar to my position group meetings, but Blaine and Cone weren't there.
Well, that's the thing, man. It's like most people in the media want to get, or even just really in any profession, want to get a million miles away from family members. What I mean, you just kind of answered this question a bit ago by saying that Blaine, kind of in a way invited himself along on this journey of yours for the podcasting. But what made you say like, yes, let's do this together?
Well, me and my brother been through a lot. Me and my brother were always very close growing up, and my dad passed away. Going on a decade ago. I was the oldest, and had to kind of take on a different role. My mom was having problems. She always had problems, so I was kind of me and him were always really tight, and you know, he's always been my best friend. And we have the same sense of humor, so it's always hilarious. At least to me, it is because we have the same sense of humor. But no, I really couldn't see it without him being involved. Because we've done everything together. I mean, there's a 4-year age gap. We didn't go to high school or anything together, but we were always outside playing together. He was always coming to my games. I was always going to his games. We were always, when we take trips, we were the ones that were conversing back and forth. And I almost think about it in the opposite way. I don't know how I could have done it without him being a part of it. To be honest with you.
That is so cool. That is so cool. I mean, because Blaine, first time I saw him, because you were doing it solo for a long time,
Yeah.
and I just first time I saw him, I was like, my God, that has to be Jake's brother.
For
What is
sure.
going
I
on
I
here? And
this up real good. There's no hiding it.
dude,
There
it,
was
it
no thoughts of
tripped me out.
reality at any point in time.
It tripped me out so bad the first time because I
Well,
didn't.
Lon, it's
It
actually
was awesome.
happened because Blaine was just a producer on the show, and Cone was the video guy. Like he was the one like running the video.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I
You're
when I
reminding me now.
that's how we met. Um, so when we signed with Cowherd, I was just doing it solo. It was just me and the guests I would bring on, and Cone would set up the equipment and run it, and Blaine would help me come up with ideas and do some of the stuff on the periphery, some of the grunt stuff. And so when we signed with Cowherd and them, we didn't even tell the investors. Uh, I'm trying to remember exactly how it happened, but I looked at Cone, I was like, dude, do y'all just want to be on? Like, y'all want to be like the Jamies for Joe Rogan and just be on? Because I think it'd be great. And they were like, all right. So we were doing it out of the College Football Hall of Fame, and I'll never forget. the first show we do for Cowherd, the first time Blaine and Cone were ever on, like the first time they were ever on the show, it was great, went fantastic. At least in my eyes, I thought it did. And when we got done, instantly one of the investors called me. So I like looked at Cone and Blaine. I was like, this is either going to go really good or it's going to go really bad. Because we told nobody. We didn't even tell Cowherd. Like, so he answers the phone, or I answer the phone. I'm like, hey, man. He's like, hey, man, I wish you would have told me that Cone and Blaine were coming on. I was like, yeah, man, sorry about that. He's like, sorry, that's the best one you've ever done. We should have done this sooner. So I was like, all right, good. You know, like, all right, good. So that was it. That, I mean, we're like-minded, but we're not the same. I think that's a big part of it. But we've always had chemistry. Some people think that we've been doing the show for like people that don't know that I coached or that Cone was running his own video production company or that Blaine coached. They think we've been doing this for like 8 years. I'm like, dude, we're not even a year and a half into all three of us doing this together. So that's why I think another reason it's growing so fast is because it's like just reps, man. It's like routes on air and going to practice. You just get better and better and better and better. And there's really no dead air. You know, somebody always knows when to pick up. But again, like we're not going out there running a play. Like it isn't like, all right, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, I'm going to do this, you're going to say that. We're just going in there and talking. Like it's actually legitimate, genuine conversation. I mean, sometimes I have to look at the rundown sheet to move on to the next thing because we're just talking about the things we're talking about. So that's what makes it fun. I think that's what keeps it fresh too.
Dude, that's why it's hilarious because there's a whole industry of people trying to like, okay, let's pretend we're just guys talking sports, and you guys are just guys talking sports.
That's all it is. Like, there's no like people. I get asked all the time, like, man, can you give me some tips or like, can you give me some advice? And I want to help. And like I said, I still got a long way to go. I mean, I'm not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I always tell people like, man, it's really hard for me to explain this to you because I don't have a sheet of paper that lists out all the things that I did and how I'm going to act and this was good or this was bad. I'm just being myself. Like I don't know a way to put that into. That's why I would say just be yourself. Well, that sounds cliche, but that is 100% what's going on. No, there's no trickery. There's no room full of writers that we go in and say, "Give me your opinion. Give me your opinion." All right, I like that one. That it is all us. It is 100% Shapiro and them don't tell us what to say, which is fantastic. It's all us, man. And we're just guys talking about sports that happen to work in sports and play sports for a while. And I think it's just a good blend.
There we go. I was wondering why you were so small. Damn. Sorry, Jake.
Dude, I'm jacked and tan, Lon. You know that.
Now, I mean, Jake. There's one program that you know more than any. I mean, you guys cover everything. But there's one program, one team that you really know more than any, and that's Auburn.
Dang, I thought you were going to say South Alabama. I want to talk about Auburn right now.
That's true.
Some of the FEMA trailers and the disaster relief for the hurricane to Auburn right now. It's that bad.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk all about LSU's own issues, of course, but right now, LSU have their own problems, of course, but Auburn feels fractured off the field, and it's bled into their performances. You know, the T word's been thrown around, toxic. Is it a toxic environment at Auburn right now?
I think you'd have to say yes. There's some toxicity in it. I mean, you got a lame duck coach. He's a dead man walking. Like, what do you expect? You know what I'm saying? Like, what? Nobody's going to be excited about the product that's out on the field. Auburn is as bad as I've ever seen them. Like from a personnel standpoint, just from a talent standpoint. I've seen Auburn blow games. I've seen Auburn make terrible decisions. I've seen bad things happen because of things Auburn could control. But I have never seen Auburn be this just bad. They're a bad football team. They're not good at playing football. That's the best way I can put it. There's a couple good players, but as a team, they're not good and the coaches don't make adjustments. So you got coaches that either don't know what they're looking at or refuse to adjust, mixed with players that aren't good enough at the most important positions in the SEC West. Yeah, that formula is not going to work, bud. So everybody sees the writing on the wall. That's why I said last week, Missouri absolutely falling to pieces in the fourth quarter was the worst thing that could have happened to Auburn. It's the worst thing. I would have fired him after the win. I'd have fired him after the win. It was that bad. And I don't believe in ugly wins, but I believe in bad coaches that get lucky every once in a while. So we're just delaying the inevitable. You're just delaying the inevitable. So the longer you delay the inevitable, the longer the gap continues to grow between Alabama and Georgia and LSU and Texas A&M and Florida and Tennessee and all this stuff. So they're on the hamster wheel right now. You can call it toxic. You can call it a waste of time. You can call it bland or kind of, just a bad time, because that's what it is. I mean, Auburn's in a bad spot. You need a regime change, and it needs to happen soon.
How much do you think is like athletic director Rich McGlynn beholden to the boosters? Yeah, I mean, we keep hearing like the boosters run Auburn. Is that really true?
Well, look, the people that pay the money run most places.
Of course, of course.
There's fewer places that give full control to a guy than that don't. I mean, you've seen Georgia decided to do it. Alabama had to hit rock bottom to do it. Texas
Exactly.
hasn't done it. A&M did it for Jimbo, and yes, with NIL, but they just signed the #1 recruiting class. I know Texas A&M doesn't exactly look like a national championship winning team, but they're going to have good enough players in there where it doesn't matter the scheme. It's physics, it's science, it's gravity. So I think that kind of gets blown up a little bit out of proportion because it's like that more places than it's not. But the problem with the Auburn boosters is that they're so out front. They're in the media. That they're who they are. They're there. Most boosters, you don't know who they are. They're behind the scenes. The moves that they make aren't in the public eye. The moves that Auburn's money people make are in the public eye. I think that's where the problem is, and the full control problem. Anytime the formula now, Nick Saban showed everybody the way. Billy Napier wasn't taking the Florida job unless they met his list and they met him. Auburn wouldn't meet him. Kirby Smart was going to take the Auburn job, but they told him he couldn't coach in the national championship game for Alabama as the defensive coordinator and that they weren't going to give him full control. I wouldn't do that either. It's hard enough to coach in the SEC West. It's hard enough to be at Auburn right now when Alabama and Georgia are two of the juggernauts in the sport, and you're going to have to fight with a hand tied behind your back? Man, hell no. I was born at night, but not last night. So there's some truth to it, but I think there's more schools that do it that way, just not in the public eye. So the biggest question to me is whatever new AD they hire, which I think they're going to have to hire an AD before they hire a coach, because a coach worth his salt isn't going to go to a place that he wasn't hired by the AD, because that gives you some protection. That was why when Alan Green plays with Auburn, that just increased Harson's chances of getting fired. And you mix that with the Penn State disaster and that, put diesel on a fire that's already raging. So it's just a matter of time. But the Auburn boosters, they need to give full control to a guy. Will they? I don't know. If they haven't done it by now, will they ever do it? Like, how far down does Auburn have to go before they just, take their hands off the wheel and let somebody else who knows what they're doing drive it? I don't have an answer for that.
That's fair. I mean, but Jake, there's one really weird question. It's kind of bizarre, but why did Auburn hire Brian Harsin, a coach they don't really seem to want, and a coach they've done crazy stuff that might even generate a lawsuit down the line to fire? Why did they hire Brian Harsin?
He was like the third or fourth option. You got to kind of look at the timeline that happened before that. Gus Malzahn did a lot of great things at Auburn. Gus Malzahn had a lot of success at Auburn, but he couldn't beat Georgia. He wasn't recruiting very well, especially on the offensive line, and the trajectory of Auburn was going down. So they got rid of Gus Malzahn, who's beloved in the coaching community, and some coaches look at it and say, well, if Gus did that and they fired him, I probably can't go in there and do better than that with Alabama and now Georgia with Kirby Smart, so I'm not taking that job. So they missed out. They wanted Kevin Steele. That's who the money people wanted. The Auburn fan base absolutely revolted against that, which I don't think they were wrong to. I mean, Kevin Steele is 100 years old, man. Like, Nick Saban's been at Bama for 15 years. He's old now, but look what he's done. I mean, Kevin Steele, again, I mean, how long is he going to be around? Do you want to put the future of your program in a guy that's, that old's hands that's not going to be there for very long, you would think, even if he had success due to age. So that happened, and then it was just an absolute media circus. The negativity surrounding Auburn pushed a lot of people away. Billy Napier, because of the list of demands not being met and the negativity, you're not burning the equity you built up at Lafayette to go to Auburn. That was, he ended up making a good decision, I think, in going to Florida. So they whiffed on a couple guys, and Brian Harsin was there. Alan Green decided that's the guy that he wanted because I guess, they talked by the pool one time, which And if that was how everything worked, it'd be a pretty weird place. But look, you got, you went to the bar looking for a 9 and you ended up with a 4 because you were acting like an ass. So you didn't dress good. And everybody's talking about you because you act weird when you get there. So that's what happened. And you get a guy in that's unproven, that obviously can't handle it, that, isn't up to snuff in this jungle. At Boise State, he kind of got his milk brought to him. Kids will go to Boise State. You don't have to sign top 15 recruiting classes. You don't got to go out there and really earn the recruits. In the SEC, it doesn't matter who you got to go fight for them. And Brian Harsin just isn't a big enough lion in this jungle to go get it done.
Wow. One thing that's also gotten lost, there's been a lot of talk of his pedigree and coaching and the timetable on his seemingly looming potential firing. But was there any truth to the allegations against him in your view, Jake?
No, that was a message board innuendo that got blown up. I think it gave people a way to get after him or to embarrass him or to shame him. That didn't happen. Stuff with Cornelius Williams did not happen with his daughters and all that stuff. That was just a TMZ moment for everybody, and it's good for media people and views and clicks and stuff like that. But no, that never. I can promise you that never happened. I would tell you. I'm as a guy that grew up in Auburn. We're all a fan of somebody. I'm an Auburn fan. I'm probably harder on Auburn than anybody. So I would have told you that is a false. That was a false narrative.
That's why I asked you, Jake. I know you will. That's what you actually. It shows that you actually care about Auburn, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, again, it's just like raising a child, I guess. You can't just tell them that they're doing great at everything, and when they screw up, just say it's okay. We'll be all right. Just fine. The White Goodman from Dodgeball. I'm not okay. You're not okay, but that's okay. Type of thing. You got to be honest, because those guys over in Tuscaloosa are being honest, and Athens they're being honest. And that's who you're judged against, at Auburn. So, if I got to be Jon Snow pulling out the sword as the whole army's running at me, I'll do it.
Oh my God, I love it! I love it. A Game of Thrones reference. I love it, dude. That's most of what makes your show great. It's almost like a psychedelic experience every time I put it on. What's Jake? What's the biggest threat to the program's stability for Auburn over the next few seasons?
It's to me, because look, Auburn, while it is hard to win there right now with what Alabama and Georgia's done, it's a great place. It's a place where want to go. It's a place you can win a national championship. That's been proven. You can win the SEC. You can beat Alabama. You can be dominant at Auburn, and the people love it. The loyalty of the fan base that shows up to games, even games against cupcake opponents, and even when they're losing and stuff like that. Auburn. I'll say this: Auburn loves Auburn, not just Auburn football. Auburn people love Auburn, not just Auburn football. And I think that's the difference in Auburn and some places, which I won't name. But I think the biggest threat to them is probably to stability and being able to get back in the fight and get back into the recruits is a stigma. I think it's the stigma of, oh, well, Auburn's in decline, or it's the stigma of you can't have success at Auburn because of the boosters, or the stigma of you'll never catch Alabama or Georgia again. I think it's more of a mental thing than the actual situation that's going on, because a lot of stigmas keep a lot of people away from things, in all realms of life. So I think stigma is probably the best answer.
That's in my mind. I'm thinking recruiting, but you just said it though. Stigma.
Well, it affects everything, Lon.
It plays so much into recruiting.
Yeah, recruiting is a business nowadays. It is an absolute business. These kids all think they're going to the NFL. It's not about where your dad played anymore. It's not about where you're from. It's about who's going to give you the most NIL money and who can get you to the NFL the quickest. And why would you go if I just graduated cum laude from Harvard? I'm not going to take a job as an assistant at a hardware store. No offense to assistants at hardware stores, but you probably didn't graduate cum laude from Harvard. I'm going to Goldman Sachs and making $450 a year, dog. That's what I've set myself up to do this. I'm a 4-star. I'm a 5-star. I'm a really good player. Well, I'm going to go where the business is good. It's like Colonel Aldo Rain said in Inglourious Basterds, the business is booming right now. If you go to Alabama, that's a great business decision. You go to Georgia, that's a great business decision. You go to Ohio State, that's a hell of a business decision. So kids have gotten smarter about it. The technology age has helped that. The NIL age is going to further push that. And the transfer portal Age is going to somewhat tamp down the ones that get there if it doesn't go good early, which is sad in its own right, because I think football is a great teacher of life. So, look, stigma affects everything. That's the problem. And once you're labeled with that, it's hard to get out from under that. So that's probably the thing that Auburn fans should be worried about the most.
Absolutely agree. And with Auburn though, Jake, going into this game against LSU, like you said, back on on the back of an ugly win against Missouri, where a lot of people were expecting Harsin to be fired. I bet there's a lot of media people with those tweets prepared in their drafts, just waiting to press tweet and send. But this week, against LSU, do Auburn have a player who can take this game over?
Well, see, this is where football is different than basketball and baseball. Like in baseball, I can have a pitcher. I can put Jacob deGrom up on the mound, and he can shut you down for 9 innings, and all we need is 1 run. In basketball, I can have LeBron or I can have Giannis, and for 1 game, they can take that game over and win that game. It doesn't work like that in football. The football's the ultimate team sport, and the game's won and front. Auburn's problem isn't in the running back room. Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter and even Damari Alston, they're nice. They're good backs. They all have a chance, I think, to play at the next level. Wide receiver room is not great, but it's not so bad to where, it's going to affect you in a huge way, especially if the run game's good. Where Auburn is bad is up front on the offensive line. And a running back can't block for himself. A wide receiver can't pass protect while he runs routes, and a quarterback struggles to throw the ball and get into any rhythm when you're running for your life. Now, I will say, Auburn's quarterback room is a 5-alarm fire right now. You know about TJ Finley. Y'all want him back? Robbie Ashford can't throw it from me to my mailbox accurately, consistently enough to be a threat. He can run really well. So if you don't have a good offensive line, doesn't matter what scheme you have, doesn't really matter what quarter. Even look, Cam Newton was the most dominant college football player I've ever seen in my life. I don't think there was one other player on that Auburn offense that started an NFL game and they won a national championship. But that offensive line was good enough. That offensive line is elite compared to the one that Auburn has now. And the center's out, so you had to shuffle up an already badly personneled and managed offensive line. I don't see how that problem gets fixed. There's some ways you can hide it a little bit with sprint outs and screens and trying to pitch backwards from a play calling standpoint. But over a 4-quarter game, gravity sets in. So that's where I think Auburn's biggest problem is, and you can't fix that overnight. But when you don't get any offensive linemen out of the portal and you whiff on 2 quarterbacks in the portal, it's on you, dog.
I think if there's one player that maybe had a chance to start a game on that offense, maybe Mike Tolbert. Per chance? Or did he ever start?
Look, Lee Ziemba played some snaps in the NFL, but they didn't have anybody. I don't think they had anybody they didn't have anybody in offense that got drafted. I mean, look, it was Cam Newton, Nick Fairley, and Josh Bynes, man. Let's be honest. Best receiver Auburn had was Darvin Adams. Great college player, but he was a CFL guy. He weighed 145 pounds almost. So, look, it just – football's the ultimate team sport. The game's won and lost up front, and Auburn on the offensive line is just hot dog water. I don't know another way to put it.
Hot dog water. That reminds me of that Limp Bizkit album, circa 2001. Jake, LSU, you have a special relationship with the Tigers and this fan base. We all became acquainted with you on a whole nother level last year with the whole J-Boy moment where someone calls in to Coach O's show, said their name was J-Boy, got Coach O to say your name and brand. Then the guy starts asking Orgeron about blondes, sisters, and sex. And meanwhile, your name is thrown into a college football moment that'll be remembered forever. What was that like to experience?
Well, it's funny. T-Bob texted me the next morning and was like, dude, that was hilarious on the call-in show, but it didn't sound like you. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I'd seen some stuff. I hadn't even checked my phone on social media yet to see. And I looked down and it's exploded. I'm like, all right, what happened? So then I call T-Bob and he tells me. And I'm like, dude, are you serious? He was like, so you didn't have anything to do with that? I was like, dude, I just listened to that. Me and you are talking right now. Does that sound anything like me or my brother or Cone or anybody that you know that I'm associated with? It was some random dude. I want to know who it was. Because Ed Orgeron's talking about putting me in a hole. Like in the bayou, I didn't even do anything. So I'm expecting to see like 2, big Cajuns coming up to my door, ready to put some concrete shoes on me or something for something I ain't even do. But I lasted longer than Ed did.
You got Joe Pesci walking up to your door.
Hey, man, I was looking outside. Like, I had my animals all hyped up. Like, I mean, we were ready to go. We were going to batten down the hatches in Alamo this thing.
Hey, J-Boy, we'll
Yeah.
put you in a hole, J-Boy.
Yeah.
I mean, how big was that moment in retrospect, though? Do you think that moment was big for getting your name, your brand out there
Oh
into
yeah,
the
like
lexicon?
I'd like to thank the person. It was huge. I mean, it obviously kind of ingratiated me a little bit with the LSU fan base, and then the coaching search happened, and we were on top of that thing. So look, I think that's a lot of moments that added up to kind of where it is now. But that was one of them for sure.
You're on record saying you believe Brian Kelly can win and will win a championship at LSU.
Yeah.
Is there anything you've seen this season that would maybe change that opinion?
Hell no, it only reinforced it. I mean, I said this on the radio the other day. It must be nice for LSU fans finally watching one of your teams get better as the season goes on. I think that's a credit to Brian Kelly as opposed to the absolutely regression that we've seen with Orgeron after he got blessed with the Avengers in 2019 and was able to win it. I think what you're going to get from Brian Kelly, I say this all the time. I think he's the stepdad you didn't want, but you always needed. Is Brian Kelly the flashiest, the sexiest, the most out there on social media? No, got some decent dance moves. But outside of that, I think what Brian Kelly gives you, he comes in and says, you know what? You're going to start going to class. You're going to get better friends. You're going to clean your room, and you're going to be accountable. And you may not like it at first, but then all of a sudden, when you're graduating from Columbia, at the end of the day, you thank him for that. And I think Brian Kelly, the mixture of stability and organization with the talent and saturated state and fan base and national brand that LSU is should scare every other team to death. And watching them progress as a team and at least to this point buy into what Brian Kelly's selling. Because look, you can fool a lot of people in this business. You can't fool the kids. You can't fool the players. And if you look at the level of respect they already have for Brian Kelly, that speaks louder than any play will this year. I laugh. People were upset about the Florida State game, and Brian Kelly can't do it. Dude, Nick Saban lost to La Monroe in his first year. Now, I'm not saying Brian Kelly's Nick Saban. I think there's only one Nick Saban, and the closest thing to Nick Saban is sitting over there in Athens right now. But Brian Kelly is a guy that I think behind closed doors is a lot cooler than what people think. I think he's a lot smoother than what people think. Sometimes I think he wants it that way. So you got a CEO in there, LSU with a CEO that knows how to run a business, that has structure, that has organization, that preaches accountability. With that talent, it's just a matter of when, not if.
Jake, and you've seen you just said a team that's starting to grow throughout this season, the first 4 games of the season. Who has caught your eye over these first 4 games?
You talking about LSU?
Absolutely.
I think if you watch the way they played against Florida State, it wasn't very clean. It was sloppy, self-inflicted wounds. They were making controllable mistakes. And that's what you want to eliminate. Because I don't think a lot of people realize most teams in college football and sports in general lose games. They don't win them. You hear the process with Nick Saban. It's about being consistent, which is another way of saying, let's play good, let's let them play bad and take advantage of their mistakes. Florida State took advantage of LSU's mistakes and won the game. Then what did you just see LSU do against Mississippi State? The exact same thing that Florida State did to them. That shows growth. That shows understanding. That shows maturity. But what it shows the most is that Brian Kelly and his staff is communicating effectively to the players, and they're listening, and they're understanding. That loss to Florida State, probably the best thing that's happened to LSU since they hired Brian Kelly. Because you can say what you want in the offseason. Right when the bullets start flying, and something bad happens, and you can look and say, hey, I told you. You believe me yet? Watch what happens if you actually listen and do it the way I want you to do it. And you've seen that. Now, will that continue? New team. He doesn't have the roster he wants yet. You're starting 2 freshman offensive tackles. Jane Daniels isn't an elite thrower of the ball. There's still going to be some bumps in the road. But watching the growth from week 1 to where we are now should tell you a lot about Brian Kelly and where they're at.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. Oh, hell yeah. Basically, what I've been writing in my articles is, yes, we don't know where we're going here with LSU this season, record-wise, but that is what we're seeing, and that's going to have a major effect over the next few years. But, I mean, I know you love your betting, Jake, and if you were to wager how many games will LSU lose in 2022 directly because of Jaden Daniels' inability to throw the football?
I think the ones against superior opponents. There'll be games where LSU, even with the roster they have, I'm not saying it's bad, but it'll be better. They have a better roster than Auburn. But there will be some games where the rosters may be even, where Jaden has to make those throws, and we're going to see. You know what? He's shown growth. He's shown maturity. I think he understands who he is. I think Brian Kelly and that team understands who he is. The biggest thing for LSU isn't Jaden Daniels' ability to throw the ball. It's continuing to have success in the run game. Because the better you are in the run game, the more separation the receivers are able to create, the more guessing that the safeties have to do, the closer they have to get to the line of scrimmage. And that's when you let guys like Malik Neighbors, like Kayshon Boutte, like some of the witches that you have, even the backside of the backfield, Armani Goodwin, John Emery, guys like that, you let them go play. And I think it's balance that LSU needs to have. Because you're athletic as hell on defense now. Well, like, especially in the back end. That looked like an LSU defense to me in the back end a little bit against Mississippi State. Flying around, knocking the hell out of people, letting them know a little bit about it. The gold shining, and I'm not talking about the jerseys. I'm talking about on the teeth, baby. And
Yes.
So I think if LSU can continue to play clean, it's going to be tough to beat Bama. All right, you're going to have some games where it's going to come down to one possession. But you look at turnovers, you look at are you staying ahead of the chains on first down, which I think they've done a good job, and you look at time of possession. Those are the three things. Penalties, they can fool you sometimes, but when you play Bama, it's going to be tough. When you play superior teams, it's going to be tough. That's where Jaden Daniels' legs have to win you the game in reality, whether it's extending the play outside of the pocket, letting guys work in a scramble drill when the play breaks down, or quarterback design runs. That's where he's got to be able to get a couple of those third downs. So, look, I had LSU going 4-4 in the SEC. I still kind of feeling that way. I think they may be a little bit better than what I thought. I don't think it's out of the question to see them go 5-3. I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that they may go 6-2 because look, LSU is still kind of unknown right now, which can be a weapon in itself because they have cats running around, and the more reps that Will Campbell and the other freshman tackle get, the better off they'll be. But everybody will talk about the pass game, and it makes sense. But the best way to fuel a pass game is with a damn good run game, and I think LSU has the ability to do that as we move through the season.
Absolutely. Just a few more questions here, Jake. I know you I mean, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I mean, this is incredible. Giving us your views here because I agree with you. I mean, LSU are starting to really pound the ball, running up for over 200 yards the last 3 games, I believe, here now, including against Mississippi State with the guy they tried to hire or were thinking of.
Barnett's of a DC, man. Like, you're going to see it against A&M, and I know A&M's not exactly the Globetrotters or the Warriors on offense, but, I mean, Zach does an unbelievable job. There's such a discipline defensively.
Oh, I do love Arnett, and that's why it was impressive to me to go over 200 against them, and it seemed like it was wearing them down throughout 3.5, 4 quarters, and then busting it loose with Armani Goodwin to kind of seal that. But
turnovers, you were the ones that took advantage of their mistakes, and that's a lot of times how it happens.
And that's what I was writing in my preview is we gotta repeat what we did against them last year, where Cordell Flott had a pick and a fumble in like the first quarter. Kayshon Boutte gets touchdowns off of it, and that just finished it off. We just had to let them keep everything in front of us, and the game was over. I mean, when you get that game plan, the air raid, chasing by 2 scores, you rarely see that overturned. But looking into this crystal ball, which may or may not be a skull cast of David Cone, but we look into the future. Jake, is this Matt House defense a legitimate top 10 unit in the country?
I think they can be. I mean, again, look at the way LSU recruits. I mean, it's always more about the players than it is about the scheme. That's a common misconception with fans. If it was all about the scheme, everybody would run the same thing. Because look, you look in the NFL, the talent gap between the worst player in the NFL and the best player, while it's a gap, is not nearly, or the best team and the worst team is not nearly as wide as it is in college. So you have a lot of everybody has talented players in the NFL. So it's way more about scheme. What do you see in the NFL? A lot of people basically run the same stuff. There's nobody running the triple option in the NFL. Nobody's going up tempo all the time. Nobody's just going 5. That's why when you look at what the Chiefs run sometimes, it looks like you're reading a Dr. Seuss book because it's so different than what you're normally seeing because they're taking some chances with Andy Reid and Bieniemy and doing some crazy stuff out of formations and doing some interesting motions. But in college, It is way more about the talent. There's been a lot of play callers that look like geniuses because they had great players. There's been a lot of great play callers that look like idiots because they don't have good enough players. So I think Matt House, I think the question you're asking me is Matt House confident enough with the talent that LSU can bring in on defense to have a top 10 defense? And my answer to that is hell yes.
I mean, they've just been looking sick. But really, to bring this back to Auburn, just to kind of finish that off, how could Auburn pull off an upset?
You know Magic?
Yes, indeed.
Well, I mean, look, if you know Matt, the only way really outside of LSU just playing terribly is if somebody at Auburn knows, Albus Dumbledore or Gandalf, because I don't see a way to make that offensive line be any better.
Merlin.
And talent. Auburn's roster is terrible right now. It's as bad as it's ever been at the places that matter the most. Offensive line, depth on the defensive line, quarterback. Look, there's a lot of guys playing in the Sun Belt and American that could come out and play wide receiver and for a Power 5 team. There's a lot of guys playing running back that we've seen it. I mean, again, just look around at some of the guys. I mean, at the end of the day, look at Penn State. I mean, they get Western Kentucky's best receiver, Tinsley, and he looks like Randy Moss out here playing in Power 5. It's about up front. It's about the linemen. And Auburn is not good enough up front to make up for anything that happens. LSU would have to turn the ball over at least 2 times. I think Jaden Daniels would have to miss guys on third down. I mean, Malik Neighbors has been a great security blanket on third down. You'd have to not be able to run the ball very well and get in third and longs and predictable downs while still corralling Jaden Daniels somehow from running when the play breaks down. And then offensively, you have to find a way to run the ball because you damn sure can't throw it. So there's a very narrow runway for Auburn to win this game. The odds of that happening are not great, but I will say the one kicker, Jordan Hare, is a crazy place. It's a crazy place, and if anybody should know about this Auburn LSU home rivalry, it's LSU fans. We've had earthquakes, we've had fires. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. If alien disclosure, if the aliens ever came down from outer space to tell us they're here, there is no shot in hell that it's not in an Auburn LSU game.
I mean, this is brilliant because I was literally just going to ask you what your favorite LSU Auburn memory is, because I mean this has been the wildest series. I understand there's so many crazier rivalries. I mean, you could argue that the Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama might be one of the greatest rivalries of all time. LSU, Alabama, of course, but LSU, Auburn always brings out the weird, man. I mean, what's your favorite?
It's the Halloween of regular season games. I would say my favorite one was in 2004 when LSU, Jordan Hare, Jamarcus Russell was there, Saban's on the sidelines. Auburn's having a great year. It's Jason Campbell's 23rd year at quarterback at Auburn. You got Ronnie and Cadillac and all these guys. And Auburn wasn't playing great. I think Marcus Randall was the quarterback there at LSU too. I think he was split time.
10-9. Final score 10-9.
Yeah, so it was 4th and 12. 4th and 10 maybe. And Auburn's got the ball about midfield. They got to go down. If they don't get it, game's over. Courtney Taylor runs a comeback route, yard past the sticks. Campbell puts an absolute dart on him. He catches it. He gets the first down. Auburn goes down and scores. Everybody's going nuts. I mean, 2004. Carry the 2. 18. I mean, I'm 14 years old. So LSU's driving, throws a pick basically in the end zone. That place was as loud as I've ever heard it. I was so excited. I sprinted out of the stadium about half a mile to 3/4 of a mile. I sprinted straight back to the tailgate. I was so excited. So that was a hell of a game. That was a hell of a memory. I'd say 0 for LSU.
I mean, that game was just heartbreaking, Jake. That game was just heartbreaking. But I love that you had your moment at such a young age.
Yeah, well, and then LSU at home throws the touchdown passes. Time expires while Les Miles, thinks he's at the same place, Joe Biden is right now. So, and I've had my heart broken that way too.
Did you just compare Les Miles to Joe Biden? Because that was probably the greatest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, yeah, show me the lie. The only difference is one of them is grass and the other one smokes it.
Oh my God, that was the greatest thing I've ever heard. Oh, Jake, I mean, just a few more questions. Just the last two questions here. there's been a lot of shade cast on Brian Kelly since his arrival at LSU. Jake, I mean, do you feel there's anything Brian Kelly didn't anticipate about the SEC or Southern culture?
No, I think the whole Southern culture thing is overblown. You can either coach football or you can't. You can either know how to hire or you don't, or you can either recruit or you can't. I think Brian can do all those things. He has caught a lot of shade, but what did old boy from 300 say? Well, the arrows want to blot out the sun. Well, we'll fight in the shade. I think Brian Kelly's decided to fight in the shade. I think he's embraced it. If you go back to SEC Media Day, embracing the Southern accent thing. Look, Brian Kelly's came down to LSU to do one thing. That's win a national championship. Let's not beat around the bush. He was in that tunnel when they played Bama and the Natty, and he looked at what they looked like, and he looked at what Notre Dame looked like. I think he made the decision then. It just had to be the right spot at the right time. He knows what he got into. He knows what LSU's about. He knows what LSU can do, and he believes he's the guy that can do it. And I believe he's the guy that can do it too. He's the winningest coach all time at Notre Dame. That's not exactly easy to do. To put it with some of the coaches that they've had as well, including New Holtz. But I think Brian Kelly's in the right spot. I think he's up for the challenge.
See, I thought it was crap, but I really wanted to ask a true Southerner if the whole Southern culture.
If that was the case, then nobody that ever came from anywhere else would ever have any success. Urban Meyer came down
Nick
from
Saban.
bald. Nick Saban came down from Michigan State and bald. I mean, that's not how this works. Well, that's not how anything works outside of you writing Southern love novels or a Taylor Swift song. I mean, in the real world, like, you can either do the job or you can't.
Jake, thank you so much. This has been crazy, man. I've wanted to do this for a while. I should have asked a long time ago. You were so generous with your time, though. I cannot believe it that you spent this long with us. Thank you so much, my man. You've just been killing me over here, and I'm sure everyone's gonna love watching this. Tell Blaine and Cone I hope to meet them soon, and you guys have a good rest of your night and a good weekend.
Definitely, man. Well, I appreciate you asking me. I'm always down to come on. Like I said, I always enjoy your stuff. Enjoy the back and forth on social media, and it's a lot of fun. And I'll tell them you said what's up. We'll go grab a cold soda sometime here soon. But I appreciate it.
Let's do it, Crain. J-boy. J-boy.
It wasn't me, I swear.
That was one question that I was gonna ask, but you basically answered it. I was gonna be like, Jake, come, did you do this? Was it really you? I mean, it was genius if it was.
Well, if it was genius, then you can give me credit for it. But deep down, I really didn't do it. So, it's just, I guess, beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Well, it all worked out, my man. Thank you so much, dude.
Anytime, bro.
Everybody subscribe to the J-Boy. Well, no, sorry. Subscribe to Crain and Company, formerly J-Boy Show, at Daily Wire. Subscribe now, dailywire.com, and the YouTube channel as well. It is the greatest, the fastest rising sports show and the best sports show right now in the country. Thank you, Jake, so much.
Lon, no problem, buddy. I appreciate you, and keep rocking and rolling.
Dude, have a great LSU Auburn game this weekend.
Hey, I will. I know you guys will. I'll watch it, but we'll see how it goes. I appreciate it, Lon. See you, buddy.
Peace out, Jake.
See ya.
That was Jake Crain. Wow. An hour with Jake Crain. He's probably like, God, why did that dude just get an hour of my time? What the hell was I thinking? He's probably like, what the hell was I doing going on there for an hour? Oh my gosh, I've been waiting to do this billion other important things over this ridiculously small rinky dinky site. But Jake is an amazing dude for coming on, and I can't thank him enough. I really kind of, do have some anxiety that I face when I'm doing these things. It's never something that I really feel or sense, but it's something I can, it doesn't prevent me from talking to people. It doesn't prevent me from facing fears or facing it, but it's just something that is a nervous little tick that sometimes makes me, kind of weird in the moment. And so that was so brilliant of Jake to be constantly just, you know, answering these questions with brilliant answers. I mean, what depth. I mean, he blew my mind answering some of those questions about the origins of the J Boy show and the origins of Crane and Company. And then you got all the stuff he talked about with LSU or Auburn, and what you have is a hell of a show. So everybody, definitely check this out, watch it, and have a good one.